Hi there, I'm Joe Silva, and I'm excited to bring you an episode of our Ideal Startup series. So, in this series, we're going to talk all things about starting a small business. So, this could be a mom and pop, a brick and mortar, an online, whatever it is. We're very passionate to help and serve small business, and starting a business is a huge step. So maybe you're watching this and you've wanted to start a business before in the past. Maybe you've started one and it didn't quite go how you wanted. Maybe you just like small business like I do. Whatever it is, our Ideal Startup series, we're talking about what it takes, what the pieces are put together to build a business and create a business from scratch. That's the fun part of entrepreneurship and starting a business. So today we are with Christen Scofield of the Bright Side of Happy. Now, Christen is a wellness expert and a coach for businesses and individuals, does some one-on-one things. You're going to hear her story shortly, but she was really in a position where she was, in a really well-paying and good corporate job, quote unquote, a good corporate job, and she decided to follow her gut instinct and take the leap into entrepreneurship. She tells her story about juggling different things, about having, family stuff happening, health stuff happening, starting a business all at the same time. And then what her experience was going through, obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic with a brand new business as well. So her story is really fascinating to see what she's gone through over the last several months into today and where she sees the future going. And again, it's all about starting a business and what it takes. And ultimately, finding that fulfillment is what we talk about as well. So that may resonate with you. If it does, I think you really like this episode. So we're going to get right to it right now. Hi there, I'm Joe Silva. I own Ideal Payroll Service. I also host the Ideal Small Biz Podcast, and we are focusing on new businesses in our Ideal Startup series. And today we are fortunate to be joined by Christen Scofield of the Bright Side of Happy. Christen, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you. I know you got an awesome story and a fun story with a name like the Bright Side of Happy. It's got to be a fun story. So we're excited. But why don't you tell us a little bit, just start off, who you are, what your company does, and some of your background from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Christen Scofield, and I own the Bright Side of Happy LLC, and I am a health and life coach. So I actually have a background in human resources. So I spent about 18 years in that field and still do some of it today. But I decided a couple years ago, and we'll get into my story a little bit, but I decided a couple years ago that my true passion is really simplifying wellness for people and helping them get started on their own wellness journey. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. But I coach one-on-one. So I coach privately, individuals. I do group coaching as well. And now I'm starting to talk to companies about coming in to help with their wellness programs.
Awesome. And that's such an important piece of, what everybody does, whether you're an entrepreneur or a 9-to-5 worker or,
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom, whatever it is, your wellness
Yep.
it has to be priority one. And sometimes that gets put on the back burner. But,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned you started your business. So tell us around when that happened. And then what drove you to there? You had a long background, it sounds like, in HR and probably some corporate stuff. So maybe tell us that story. How did you go from that side all the way to the bright side of happy with starting your own company?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been in HR for about 18 years. And in 2016, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. And so celiac, for anybody who's not aware of it, it's an autoimmune condition in which the body attacks any gluten that comes in the body. So gluten is in wheat, rye, and barley. So the symptoms can be very mild. They can be very severe. Because the body is essentially attacking itself. And so what happens is that the intestines get destroyed, basically, and that causes a whole host of other issues. So it's different than, say, like an intolerance or, people that just avoid gluten because they don't feel good. Like, this is where if you get any amount of gluten in your body at all, you actually incur damage, like long-lasting damage. So it was a very startling diagnosis. I didn't know that my family had history. It turns out that we do, but I didn't know that at the time. I was a surprise to other members of my family. So it was very much a surprise, and it came at a time where I started young in HR, and I had, been promoted, gotten up, climbed that ladder, and I had just gotten promoted to a vice president role. I had just had another baby, so I had, two little ones, one very little at home. So it came at a time in my life where I was doing all the things, right? Like I had a big job at work. I was super stressed. I had, a little one at home. I was still nursing my littlest, which, for all the women listening who have done that, they know like that's a big undertaking to do that while also at work. So it was a lot. So to have, a health diagnosis come out of left field that required me to completely change not only my eating habits, but how we functioned in our home. For all the ladies listening, I had to change my makeup and my hair care products. Like that's a deal, right? Like it's a lot of change. And so it was very difficult to grasp from an emotional and a mindset perspective. But then also just the mechanics of it and the logistics of it, it was hard. And trying to do that and navigate all that while being sick. I mean, I hadn't healed yet, right? So still very sick. That was very, very difficult. It was very difficult to juggle all of that. And so I spent a lot of time building out Pinterest boards, making checklists, doing the research, reading books, because what I found is that doctors are fantastic most of the time in diagnosing people, but once they give them that diagnosis, like that's where their job kind of ends, right? So they say, okay, go do this. This is what's going to help you, whether it's a pill or for celiac disease, it's a gluten-free life. Go do this and you'll be fine. But they don't really tell you how to do that, right? That's kind of outside the bounds of how much they can care for their patients. And so I just kept telling my husband, like, I really wish there's somebody that would just tell me what to do, because I feel like I'm floundering. I'm not doing well at work. I don't feel like I'm being the best mom or spouse I can be. And I'm not getting any better. Like I don't feel any better. So that's kind of how the seeds kind of got planted. And long story short, over the couple of following years, like I figured it out. It was hard. There are some ugly moments, but I figured it out. I had a lot of bumps in the road, but I finally started feeling better and figured out how to actually heal my gut, that's a whole other podcast in and of itself. It's a very lengthy process. So I figured all of that out on my own. And, I finally decided, I started helping, I had a couple other people that I knew be diagnosed with celiac disease and started helping them. And I realized, you know what, like I have a knack for this. Like I've coached people throughout my career from an HR perspective, but I really have a knack for taking information and simplifying it and putting it into steps for people. So I thought, okay, like I'm ready to actually do something with this. So I left my HR job and got my health and life coaching certificates, and put a program around everything I knew and started working with people. And so the Bright Side of Happy is my company name, and that came about because it took me a while to find my happy again. But I finally found it. And so now I'm all about helping other people realize that whether you have like a crazy diagnosis like I did that came out of left field, or you're just like, I'm okay, but I know I could be better. I know there's more out there for me. I know that there are other things I could be doing, to have, increased wellness in my life. Regardless of your circumstance, like it can be done, and you can find your happy, and you can do it in an easy way. So that was a mouthful, but
no, that's
kind of
that's
how I got
awesome.
here.
That's an incredible story, and so much came at you at one time, and
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of entrepreneurs are family members, and you, on top of that, you had health issues, and on top of that, you had work and all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things, 2 kids, all this stuff, and so an incredible story to get to the bright side of happy. Obviously, maybe take us back there a little bit one more time, and what was it like? What was the internal conversations with your family? Your husband and others around you. Were they supportive of you just taking a jump and saying, well, I've got this corporate job that, likely provides you good income, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Was that difficult decision, or was it after everything you've been through, you're like, nope, I'm done no matter what, and let's go do this thing?
Yeah. I had the thing people tell me all the time is, wow, you're really brave. Because I left a wonderful job, fantastic job, very well paying job. But I just knew I had something bigger on my heart. And I just knew I didn't want to get later in my life and know that I could help people in this capacity. And I just didn't do it. And so I just knew, and I sat on it for a while. I knew I was called to do something different. And it's interesting, because you can feel like you're in congruence, and then something happens, and then all of a sudden you're just like, something doesn't feel right in my life, right? Like something needs to shift, and I don't know what it is. And I kept feeling that way. I kept feeling called to do something else, and I couldn't figure it out. And then, the pieces just kind of started coming together, and I, started looking into, God, it would be super cool to just be able to help people like this, like I'm doing kind of on the side, like full time. Like it would be awesome if that was my job. I would love that. And then I started thinking like, well, why can't it be my job? I can do this. What do I need to do this? And so I found the health and life coaching school and got enrolled, and that's about a year-long process. So got that done and started taking on clients before I was even done. And the rest is history. So.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, it's having that alignment, and it sounds like, and a lot of us go through this as entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs, is you kind of have that inside, that gut feeling, and you're like, there's something more, there's something bigger. You mentioned there's a bigger piece of your heart that you want to share.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us don't know where to go with that. And that's awesome that you found that. In your earlier story, you mentioned, you were stressed and, you're kind of doing it all, and you just had all this stuff, and that wasn't necessarily what you were aligned with. So, you kind of move out of that and into this helping role that really, it sounds like, is very fulfilling for you going forward. Now, once you make that transition, so you're in corporate, you've got all these rules and, all these systems in place already, right? And you jump into your own, where we know that isn't the case. You got to build everything and create it, which is half the fun and half the curse, right, of an entrepreneur. Tell us about that. How did you get going? How was it when you got? Was it pretty smooth, or did you hit some bumps along the way when you got started, or what was that process like?
It was a very interesting process, and it's funny because I've always said like I'd never be an entrepreneur. Like that's just not me. So this isn't what I had thought I would be doing. But I started trying to lay the groundwork for my business when I was in the health and life coaching school. And so the first thing I did was I decided, what, I'm going to start blogging. Like it's a way for me to have an emotional outlet, to kind of help educate people about celiac disease, and start putting out there some of the things that are in my head that I know that can really help people. And I'm very structured. I like things in a very logistical format. So I thought a blog is perfect because I can just start boom, 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 like putting this stuff out there. But I've never made a website. So that was really my first, I feel like my first entrepreneurial thing is that I learned how to build a website. So I took a free WordPress course, and it was a lot of trial and error and some tears along the way. But I did it, and I was pretty happy with the result, and I've refined it over time. So I think, my thing has always been like, I'm not in my corporate job anymore. I don't have a lot of funds to just be like buying services and things. So I've just kind of figured it out as I've gone, and taught myself what I don't know, and just kind of gone, it sounds so willy-nilly, but I've kind of gone with what felt right. So for me, I knew like I wanted to start with one-on-one coaching. And then I moved in and I started doing group coaching, which was super fun. And I still do that. I'm going to do it again here in a few weeks. I'll start a new group. And now I'm starting to think, okay, like I have, this HR background, I've got this health and life coaching background. It'd be so cool to be able to meld them and start working with companies, small businesses, especially, to help provide them very unique services to help their employees. And so we can get, into that whole thing. But to answer your question, there have been bumps because a lot of it is trial and error and figuring it out on your own. And, am I doing the right thing? What should I be doing next? But I finally felt like I was getting traction, and then COVID hit.
Of course. Yeah. That's how it goes, right?
Yes. Everything stopped. So I was doing like in-person speaking events and classes and things like that. And that's where I was finding a lot of my clients, because I've got all the social media stuff as well, but I've just found that when people want to hire coaches, like they go by the vibe that they get, right? And it's a lot easier to understand that and know if you connect and if you fit, if you know, or if you see them in person, right? So everything was great. And then, late February, everything shut down.
Right, right.
And then
But it
everybody,
sounds like before that, Kristen, you were kind of back to what you said earlier. You're following your instinct with what
mhm,
worked well, and a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to and see out there can probably relate to where they're not quite sure. Okay, should I sell this
mhm,
product? Should I offer this package? Should I bundle
mhm,
this or that? And they're not quite sure. But really, deep down, if you look, you probably do know, because it sounds like that's what happened with you. Is you just kind of looked
mhm.
inside yourself and said, "Yeah, I like the one-on-one stuff," and then later on, yes, I can do the group coaching, and then obviously when COVID hit, you improvise and again kind of navigate that as best as possible, but
Yeah.
you just got to listen to yourself inside, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, just kind of reinvent and just keep going. That's the thing that I kept telling myself was, okay, because I mean, my business just stopped, right? Like I had my one-on-one clients, but like getting new ones just really halted during the heat of COVID because I wasn't doing the in-person stuff anymore. Those places that I was having those events didn't want to do them online, even though I can do everything I do, I can do it virtually. But they didn't have any interest in that. So it was a struggle. And so I just kept thinking, okay, so as long as like I'm growing my audience, I'm still moving, I'm still doing something every single day, what can I do for my business? I'm still moving.
Yeah,
So,
that's
during COVID, it was hard because there wasn't a lot of new business coming in, but I felt like I had time. It was kind of a blessing in disguise because I had some more time to work like on the actual business itself, right? And figuring out like, okay, what is it that I want to do? Let's get some clarity on what feels, congruent to me. And that's, it's kind of led me to, the rest of my year, that I strategically mapped out. So let's
that's
just fingers crossed that,
right.
that we can keep meeting in person.
No, that's I think one way or the other you'll figure it out. You've shown already, a year in, the resilience it takes to be successful in an entrepreneurship venture, and
Mhm.
looking back on your time since then, COVID aside, what would you tell yourself back then to, prep yourself or get ready for, what advice would you give yourself that was starting, the Kristen who was starting 12 months ago to where you are now? What advice would you give yourself?
Mhm. My advice, honestly, and it's going to sound so cheesy, and optimistic and out of touch with reality, but my
That's the
advice would be,
best kind of advice. So fire away, go for it. Yes. Let's hear
my
it.
advice would be, it's going to work out. Whether it works out in the exact way that you had mapped it out on paper, it's going to work out, and the universe will provide. And as long as you are open to receiving opportunities, those will come. So I've had like really random opportunities to meet people or network with them, to just have a conversation, and it's morphed into other things. And it's like, oh, I could totally take my business there. And that it never would have occurred to me without that conversation. Or I'll meet somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and they'll remember that I'm a health coach and refer somebody, to me. So it's one of those things where once you get started, things just organically happen. And it, like I said, it may not be the direction that you initially set out and charted your course to go, but as long as you still, I think as long as you still feel in congruence with, what you feel you're called to do, and as long as you're still serving people with that mission, then I think the goodness will come.
I love that message. Just action creates clarity. That's what a mentor of mine has said. And,
Mhm.
that action, even if it's the wrong action, you're going to get clarity on
Yes.
where you can go. And
Yes.
eventually that intuition kicks in and you get to where you should be, not necessarily where
Yes.
you think you should be. So,
Yep.
um,
Exactly.
that's a great journey. And you've done a ton of stuff since you started. Tell us about now. So you mentioned, you help businesses and their employees stay well. So tell us why that's important, and how you come into a business with your HR background and really dive
Mhm.
into, increase their bottom line or keep their employees healthy and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So I think, and I said this earlier, I think I'm a little unique in the space just because I have lived that employee experience where I had a health crisis. And I've seen where those gaps are. And I've also lived the HR experience. So I've got that, logistical, financial, got to stick to the budget, got to sell it to leadership hat on as well. So I can see things from very much from both sides. Um, and so I think, to me, this is important because I really want to serve those employees. But at the same time, like I said, I've got that corporate hat on too. So I know that there needs to be a return on investment, right? And the thing is, and this is like COVID has really brought this to light for me, and I think for a lot of people, they just may not have actually actioned on it. But you know, what we're seeing is that the people who are at higher risk for COVID have, they've got underlying issues. And the thing that this whole time, has really kind of bothered me is that we talk a lot about COVID, but we don't talk a lot about those underlying issues. And 9 out of 10 of those underlying issues can be prevented, and they can be reversed with changing some very simple lifestyle habits. And so my goal is to really help people get started in that journey, to recognize that like the world has kind of changed and we need to be on our toes, because COVID is just the first round, right? Like, who knows what 2021 has in store for us? I haven't even seen the rest of 2020 yet, right?
Right.
So, we really need to be on our toes. And so that goes for individuals, but it goes for companies as well, because that's your workforce that you have to protect. So not only do you have, your medical expenses. So when you think about your employees and what's driving up those medical expenses, I mean, a lot of the times it's things like diabetes and obesity. Those are causing the bulk of your medical expenses. So if you can help control those and drive those down with an effective wellness program, like, why wouldn't you do that, right? And so a lot of companies, they'll do some incentives. They'll have employees like watch videos, get their blood pressure taken, check, and then you get, a certain amount off your premium next year, or you get some money added to your HSA. But at the end of the day, most of the time, that's not helping somebody actually change their lifestyle habits, right? So they're checking the boxes, but there's no real change happening there. And that's where somebody like me can be very effective, because not only can I come in and do, the education piece, so we can do workshops, we can do webinars, we can do everything virtually. But we can also do coaching, whether it's individual coaching with people or group coaching. We can do, 6, 8, 12-week programs where we meet, for 45 minutes once a week. And I take people through very specific steps that can completely change their approach to health. And their approach to wellness, and really actually change their lifestyle habits. So, what they're eating, how they're eating it, their mindset around it. That's a big one too. So there's a lot that can be done in that space, and I just don't see that happening today. So I'm excited to really start having those conversations.
Yeah, so important to, like you said, it's a lifestyle change versus a checklist. It's a preventative nature instead of a reactive, approach. So that's so valuable. Do you help any size company, Christen? Is it, if you have a health insurance plan, then you would come in and help them, or is it, 1 employee, 10 employees, 100 employees? What's kind of your scope? Who do you like to help?
Yeah, I'm really at the very beginning stages of it now. So right now I'm kind of open to anything, but my vision for it would be those smaller companies. And one of the reasons is that I feel like I can really get in and make good use of a coaching program and touch a lot of people that way. And really make an impact, because when you're able to involve the bulk of your employees in a program like that, so they're kind of all in it together, they're all going through very similar things, right? But like, especially for those smaller companies, having really different and differentiated benefits and perks and incentives, that's huge for attracting talent, right? And then, not to mention it helping the medical costs, you're driving down absenteeism, you're driving up productivity and engagement. So there's all sorts of benefits to be had. And I think, I'm really excited to work more so with those small and medium-sized businesses. I think that's where I can be most effective.
Yeah, that's in my business, that's our same target market, and that's because those are the ones that need the help. You saw it in HR, right? You have an HR department with 100 people, then you've got some internal resources, but those small businesses may not have those resources.
Yeah.
And if 1 out of 10 employees is out, it's 10% of your workforce, right? One out
Yep.
of 100 or 200 isn't that big of a deal, but the
Yeah.
smaller you are, the more impact that has. So it's even more vital that you take care of your staff and offer those things to keep everybody proactively healthy. As we wrap up, Christen, why don't you tell us the best way to reach you? So if somebody listening to this or watching this wants to reach out to you for your services, let us know that and give us some parting thoughts on as we wrap up here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach me on LinkedIn by my name, Christen Scofield. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as The Bright Side of Happy. And my focus on social media has been more so women who kind of have come from my same background. So women who are in those high stress roles who have kind of realized like, wow, I've really not been paying attention to my health like I should have. And now my cup is not full. I don't know how to fill it. I have a crack in my cup. I'm falling apart. Really working with those women to help them integrate health in a very easy way. And so for them, I've also started a Facebook group called the Bright Side Community. So, women are absolutely welcome to join that as well. So that's really how you can find me. What was the second part of your question?
Just
Sorry.
any parting. That's all right. We've
Okay.
gone over a lot in our short time together.
I
So
know.
no, just any parting thoughts. Whether it's from a startup perspective, entrepreneurship perspective, or where you're at today. Any parting thoughts for those listeners out there that relate to your story that you would want to give back to them?
Yeah. I would say for people who relate to my story, I would say reach out, like really think about working with somebody to help you navigate the changes that you want to make in your life. Because what I preach is that it's really not that hard. It's very simple to make a bunch of changes that add up to a big thing. But the difference is that having somebody who's already sorted through all the information, they have it organized for you. So it's curated information and they have it put in a system so that things happen at the right time because they work and it's proven. So having that system and then having support and accountability is the key part of it as well. Having all that together can really be the difference maker. So my message would be, if my story resonated with you, like we could very much be at the right frequency and vibe together to be able to work together in some capacity. So absolutely reach out, because I'd love to, to talk to anybody that would like some one-on-one help with coaching. And then the other thing I would say too, just in terms of people considering, like, hey, I feel like there might be something more in my life. It's hard, but it is so fulfilling. Like there's been more stress than I've ever had in completely different ways than I had before. But at the same time, I've never felt as fulfilled as I feel when I end coaching calls with my clients. Like I am on top of the world because I know, and based on their feedback, I know like I am making a true difference in these people's lives. And it's amazing how much of their life wellness actually touches. Like it touches everything. So to be able to lift everything in somebody's life up in some capacity is so rewarding beyond measure. So yes, it was scary and it was hard, and there have been a lot of sleepless nights thinking about, should I or shouldn't I? But at the end of the day, if your heart is calling you, like life is short, figure out a way and go get it done.
I love
Go do
that.
it.
Figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah.
Life is short, and you were stressed before anyway, so you might as well be
Yeah, I know,
stressed
right?
doing something you love, right? So what
Well, and
difference does
it's
it make?
true. Like you're gonna have stress no matter what you do. You're gonna have stress. And it's funny. My doctor even told me that. I'd seen her for my annual checkup, like right before I left my corporate job, and so it's like, oh yeah, I'm great. I'm leaving my job. It's gonna be wonderful. And she looked at me and she said, I just want you to acknowledge, like you're still going to have stress, and it's gonna be in different ways. It's gonna come at you from different angles. So you need to be prepared for that and think about that now. And at the time, I was like, gonna be fine. And now I think about that all the time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so right. It does. It's just a great perspective to have.
For
For
sure.
sure.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, Christen, this has been awesome. Thank you for sharing your story and being on the show. Appreciate all you do. And I know you'll have a ton of success going forward. I can feel it and sense it with your mission and how happy you are doing what you do. So congrats on everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love being here.
All right, Kristen, thanks so much for being on the show. That was awesome. That really showed the startup lifestyle. You're juggling 10 different things and still making it happen. And I know you're going to have a ton of success going forward. So anybody out there watching or listening, reach out to Kristen. She can definitely help your business and you individually from the health side of things and get you pointed in the right direction. So Kristen, thank you so much for sharing your story. Again, this is part of our Ideal Startup series where we talk all things about new business, starting a new business and getting your ideas off the ground so that you can help the people and be fulfilled. That's what Kristen talked about is that fulfillment, that purpose, following your that instinct of what you know you want to do. That's what starting a business is all about. And we believe at Ideal that starting a business changes the world and it makes a difference. So do that. Now, if you like that message, if you like what you heard, if you like the episode, go ahead and like our page. So go ahead and click and like our page and start to follow us, and you'll get more content just like this. We'll bring it all out to you. And small business is so important out there. So support local. Be out there. Support local as always. Again, I'm Joe Silva. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next episode. And like I just said, support local.